Many have contacted me and indicated you'd like to hear more episodes about Hollywood, maybe Hollywood movie stars involved in crimes or suspects of crimes. So today we are going to be talking about Hollywood, the Hollywood mob. Well, how did that all come about? Back in 1930s, Lucky Luciano, back in New York, recognized there was a lot of money to be made in Hollywood. There was a lot of opportunities with the studios, organizing gambling, alcohol, prostitution. So he sent Bugsy Siegel out to Los Angeles and to see what he could do. And he did a magnificent job of getting everything organized, and it was running very smoothly as far as with the studios. So much so that they decided to send him up to Las Vegas to see what he could do about organizing gambling, since it was legal up there in Nevada. And he started the Flamingo Hotel casino and was working on it, and it was coming along. However, the mob wasn't real happy with what Bugsy was doing, and Bugsy ended up dead. So his right-hand man was Mickey Cohen. So Mickey Cohen took over the organized crime of Los Angeles. And he wasn't as smooth as Bugsy, kind of rough around the edges, and there was a lot more violence in Hollywood. And the city fathers weren't real happy with what was going on. Now, his lieutenant was Johnny Stompanato, and Johnny Stompanato worked with the studios. In doing so, he got to know a lot of actresses, and he liked that. And he had a relationship with Lana Turner, started living with Lana Turner and her daughter, Cheryl Crane. It was not the smoothest relationship. It was kind of volatile, a lot of arguments, and then one night, Johnny Stompanato ended up stabbed to death in Lana Turner's bedroom. Well, that was kind of the beginning of the end of the Hollywood mob. Isn't that interesting how it all ended up in Lana Turner's bedroom? Well, let's learn the facts of what went on all those years in Hollywood regarding the mob. Well, what is our topic today? The Hollywood mob. Well, we're going to be discussing Bugsy Siegel, Mickey Cohen, and his lieutenant, Johnny Stompanato, as well as Lana Turner. Well, Hollywood. What is Hollywood? Well, it's not a city. It's kind of a district. It's maybe 2 to 3 miles west of downtown Los Angeles. And it was an area where the motion picture studios got started. They did filming there, as well as their headquarters there. And the New York mob, under Lucky Luciano and Myra Lansky, they were looking for new opportunities after the repeal of Prohibition, and they realized that Hollywood had a lot of possibilities, especially with the studios. They could supply protection to the studios as well as assuring union cooperation, because the motion picture studios needed to come in on budget as well as on time when they were making these films. Also, the mob wanted to be able to control the alcohol as well as the gambling and the prostitution rings in the area. So there's a lot of opportunities in Hollywood. And Lucky Luciano decided to divide up Los Angeles into 2 camps, the Bugsy Siegel camp as well as the Jack Dragna camp. Now, Bugsy was given Hollywood and the motion picture studios, as well as Jack Dragna was given downtown Los Angeles all the way to the ports. So that was how it was divided. And as far as Bugsy, what was his background? Well, he comes from Brooklyn, and he got his start extorting money from the pushcart peddlers in New York. And he made a lot of money at that. And he learned about using force and getting his way. And he was noticed by the Italian Lucky Luciano as well as Meyer Lansky, who headed up the Jewish gangsters. Now, to keep the mafia mob in line, there was what was called Murder Incorporated. It was set up in which Bugsy Siegel was involved in taking care of certain mobsters who fell out of line. So he got noticed for that, and they decided to make Bugsy in charge of Hollywood. When they started looking at Hollywood as a possible area to make money, and so they sent him out west to Hollywood. Now, as he arrived there in 1939, he got involved in a murder case, and it was called Big Greenies. And what it was about was Harry Greenberg was a mobster, got in trouble with the law, and he was deported, and he came back into Canada, and he gave an ultimatum to the mob and said, hey, if you give me $10,000, I'm not going to turn into an informant against the mob. Well, the mob didn't like this form of extortion from Greenberg, so they got TikTok, Tannenbaum, and Bugsy Siegel were in charge with doing away with Greenberg. So on November 22nd, 1939, they waited for Greenberg to drive up to his house, and they approached him, and TikTok got a gun and shot Greenberg as he was seated in his car there. And Bugsy drove the getaway car. Well, the law enforcement wanted something done on that, and so they decided to charge Bugsy Siegel. They arrested him, and he was in custody. And now it was a question of, could that case be tried? So they were able to get TikTok Tannenbaum to turn state's evidence. So he agreed to testify against Bugsy Siegel, since Bugsy was kind of the main person involved in the shooting of Greenberg. So that was all set up, and Tannenbaum was an accomplice to it. But in order to convict Bugsy Siegel, the prosecutor needed corroboration. Now, where were they going to find corroboration for TikTok's testimony? And they discovered that Kid Twist Real, he could testify because he was there in one of the meetings, and he heard Bugsy Siegel and Tannenbaum talk about the killing of Harry Greenberg. So he became the form of corroboration that was needed for Tannenbaum, who was an accomplice. Now, Kid Twist was not an accomplice. He was just overhearing that conversation. So everything was going well, and the case was about to be tried, and Kid Twist was being guarded back in a hotel in Brooklyn, and everything was coming along just fine for the trial. And then on November 12, 1941, something happened to Kid Twist. He fell out of the hotel room where he was being guarded. He fell all the way down and died. Was it an accident? Or, was he pushed out the window? Or was he thrown out of the window? Well, nobody knows for certain. All we do know for certain is Kid Twist was dead, and he was no longer available to testify at the trial. So on February 6, 1942, what happened? Tannenbaum cannot be corroborated, and if his testimony cannot be corroborated, the case is dismissed. So Bugsy Siegel has the case dismissed against him as far as being involved in the killing of Harry Greenberg. Wow. I guess you could call him the Teflon Man. He was able to get away with that murder. Well, this allowed him to continue with his operation of running Hollywood, and he set up his office right there. That was where he on Sunset Boulevard. And, you know, he mixed with the movie stars, and here you can see a photograph of him with George Raft, who was the most famous actor at that time in Hollywood. Bugsy was doing very, very well. And so were the studios doing very well. All of these studios were making a lot of money, and Bugsy guaranteed them stability in their motion pictures. So everything was going along well, very, very well. And the mob decided to look up at Las Vegas. They wanted to be able to make even more money, and they noticed that the gambling in Las Vegas was very, very profitable. So they sent Bugsy up there to see what he could do in lining up the gambling in Las Vegas. At that time, they decided that instead of just downtown gambling, they decided to set up on the Strip, the Las Vegas Strip. It was a long highway, which was the entrance to downtown Las Vegas. There they could have their hotels, they could have their restaurants, their casinos, all in one place. And this would make it very, very profitable for the casino. And this was the first one, was the El Rancho. It got started there and worked out very well. And Billy Wilkinson was a visionary. He decided, well, let's build another, but this will be a much more luxurious one, and it would be called the Flamingo. And he got started on the construction of it, and it was coming along just fine, and this was going to be an eye-opener to everyone. So the mob realized this is their foot in the door into gambling in Las Vegas. So Bugsy Siegel was, he was put in to take charge of the building and of the Flamingo, and Billy Wilkinson was eliminated. Well, when Bugsy came into it, he wanted everything to be larger, bigger, and it was going to be the most elegant facility in Las Vegas. Well, it was a great idea. However, it's going to cost a lot more, and there was going to be a lot of delays in the construction. So these were problems that Bugsy was going to have to work on. Now the question was, where did the name Flamingo come from? Well, there's a lot of stories on that. Virginia Hill was Bugsy's girlfriend, and she was an actress, and she had flaming red hair and long legs. And that was where the name, she was called the Flamingo, and so Bugsy thought, that would be a good name for my new hotel resort casino. Well, he's going to open it after the construction. It was decided that the day after Christmas in 1947 would be the big day, the grand opening for the Flamingo. And nobody showed up. There was no one. The casino was basically empty. As far as the show that they were putting on, there were only a few people in the audience. And there was a reason for it. The real reason was that the airport in Los Angeles, in Burbank, was fogged in, and none of the flights for that day or the day before could get into Las Vegas. So it was very disappointing, and the mob couldn't understand why they didn't make any money on the first day of the opening of the Flamingo. Well, Bugsy decided, okay, we're going to wait a minute. We're going to revamp the Flamingo. So he continued with the construction and finished it all up, making it more luxurious than ever. And he changed the name to the Fabulous Flamingo. Well, it still didn't make a lot of money when it opened. I guess it was in March or April. And there was a lot of pressure from the mob as to why the disappointment. So they have the Mafia conference down in Cuba, Havana, And they have this meeting of all the mafia bosses with Lucky Luciano and Meyer Lansky, and they decide, okay, we're going to give you another break. Give a little slack to Bugsy, give him a chance to prove himself. Well, for whatever reason, Bugsy decides, well, okay, it's getting pretty hot here in Las Vegas. He decides to go over to Beverly Hills, and he decides to stay at Virginia Hill's place in Beverly Hills. This is his girlfriend's house right there. Very, very nice place on Linden Drive. So Bugsy's there, and Virginia Hill, she is off in Paris. So Bugsy's basically there with his friend, I think it was Mo. And on June 20th, 1947, he's there reading the newspaper, the LA Times, and everything was fine. It was a hot June, and he has all the windows open in the Beverly Hills house, and all of a sudden, there were shots. Bugsy is shot through the head from a gunman who's right there, on the sidewalk driveway. It was a high-powered rifle that was used to shoot him 3 times. He's hit and killed right there in the sofa where he was seated reading the newspaper. Well, no one is ever caught, no one is ever arrested, and no one is ever prosecuted for killing Bugsy Siegel. It had all the ingredients of a mob hit, but no one could be determined who was the one who did the killing. Well, that was the end of Bugsy Siegel, and he is buried in the cemetery there, and he was only 41 years old, but he was a legend. Bugsy Siegel was a legend in his own time and after his time, and part of that may have been because of Warren Beatty's The Movie, Bugsy. So, yes, that was Bugsy Siegel, and he certainly went out in a flame. Now, the mob continued even after his death, and it was his lieutenant, Mickey Cohen, who took over, and he was a little rougher around the edges than Bugsy. And where did he come from? Well, he came from New York, and basically the same background as Bugsy Siegel, but he started out as a boxer. He was a lightweight boxer. Mickey was only 5'5", and he did a lot of boxing in 1930 to 1933, and he was getting tired of getting punched so many times. He then went over to Chicago, and he got connected to the Chicago outfit, and that was run by Al Capone. It was mainly Al Capone's brother that Mickey worked with in Chicago. However, Mickey got into some difficulty there and realized it was time to leave. So he went to Los Angeles. So he arrives out in Los Angeles and became the boss at that time after Bugsy. And a lot more killings, a lot more violence was taking place. Even though the mob was very much involved in narcotics, prostitution, and gambling, but there was a lot of people being killed. There was a movie made of Mickey Cohen and his time in Los Angeles. It was called LA Confidential, and it kind of spells out, how the police were always after him, and he was trying to give an image of things were under control. This was his house out in Brentwood, and he was married from 1940 to 1951, and that was the depiction of Mickey. However, it wasn't that tranquil. somebody was out to get Mickey. And in the 1950s, his house got bombed, not just once, but bombed twice. And here's showing Mickey, looking at all the damage to his house. Now, who was doing it? It most likely was Jack Dragna's mobsters. They had control of downtown Los Angeles as well as the port area, the industrial area. And Mickey is concerned about his safety. And this is his Cadillac that he drove around in. And here you can see the windows. It was 2-inch thick of plate glass to protect Mickey from shootings, but he's shot at. And in 1949, Sherry's on the Sunset Strip, this is Mickey's Cadillac there, parked out in front, and somebody starts shooting at Mickey's car as his entourage comes out of Sherry's. So several people are shot. And here you can see it. Somebody was under this advertisement, outdoor advertisement, and they're shooting at Mickey's car, and it's being struck. But Mickey isn't hit. He isn't struck. Why? Well, Mickey was in the restroom washing his hands, which he always did. He washed his hands many, many times throughout the day, and that saved his life there at Sherry's. Well, there's a lot of pressure on Mickey. The city fathers of Los Angeles were getting tired of all the violence that was going on, all the shootings, all the mob actions. So they got a new police chief, and that was William Parker. He kind of had a military background, and he put an end to the crooked vice cops, and the grand jury and everybody was looking on ways of getting Mickey. And what happened was that in December 4th, 1959, Mickey is out in Sherman Oaks at a restaurant, Rondelli's restaurant, and he's seated at the booth there with his cohorts, and Sam Lozigno was with him, and this Jack Whalen, he was the enforcer. He came in and he demanded money, gambling money, that was owed by Mickey to his people. And for some reason, Sam Luciago shoots Jack Whalen right there. And his body, you can see his body there. He falls over dead. Well, the police are called out, and they go out there, and they eventually arrest Mickey Cohen for it. But he's later released, and it was Sam Luzignio. He turned himself in, and they had the trial, and he was convicted of first-degree murder. So that seemed to be the end of it until he took it up on appeal, and it was reversed. So now the prosecutor is going to have to decide what to do about a new trial. So in 1961, it was decided by the DA that they were going to prosecute everybody at that dinner table. So, as well as Sam Lusigno, as well as Mickey Cohen. And in that second trial, Sam Lusigno, he's convicted of manslaughter. But as far as Mickey Cohen, it was a hung jury. And the case was never retried. And basically, you could say that Mickey got away with murder. Well, that didn't go over well with the city fathers, and they looked upon the feds. Maybe they could get him, even though the DA couldn't get him. So the U.S. attorney went after him for income tax evasion. And here you can see Mickey being arrested by the feds, and this was in federal court, and he's convicted. He's convicted of income tax evasion, and he is given a sentence of 15 years in federal prison. Well, is that going to be the end of it? Well, he goes up to Alcatraz, and he's serving his time up there, and he's attacked by his cellmate, and he loses the sight of one of his eyes. He's beaten with a piece of pipe, and they transfer him to Atlanta, and that's where he served his remaining time, and then he retired. In 1972, he's released, and he takes up life in Van Nuys. This is his home in Van Nuys, California, and he lives there quietly, peacefully, and he dies there in 1976 of natural causes. Here's a guy who was the mobster of Los Angeles and killed a lot of people, but he dies right there of natural causes. Now, who was Mickey's assistant? Well, it was Johnny Stompanato. And who is Johnny Stompanato? Kind of an interesting character. A little different than Mickey. He got involved in organized crime in a strange way. He just did small crimes, not big things. But he got noticed by Mickey, and for some reason, Johnny liked with the stars of the motion picture studios, and he would hang out there with the different models, the stars there, and he got hooked up with Lana Turner. Lana Turner liked him. He was handsome and I guess okay in bed. So they developed a relationship. Lana Turner. Now, why would she do that? Why would she take up with a mobster? Well, she got started back in 1937, and everybody said, well, she got discovered at Schwab's drugstore. No, it wasn't Schwab's drugstore. It was called the Top Hat Cafe on Sunset Boulevard, and she went in there, and she had a soda, and that's where she was discovered. And what was that all about? Well, she had a typing class at the Hollywood High School, which was right across the street, and she didn't want to go to the typing class, so she went in there and she was discovered by a gentleman that was in there from the Hollywood Reporter. Noticed her, and she was very attractive, and he said, you know, you should be in movies. You're so attractive. Would you come for an audition? She said, no, I'd have to ask my mother first as to whether I should do that. Well, at that time, the Hollywood studios, they had what was called contract movie stars. And she was called the Sweater Girl, and very attractive, and she was groomed as a star. And she became a star for all their movies. And she was under contract with MGM, and that's where she had to do her movies. But she also had a lot of husbands. Lana Turner had so many husbands, from Archie Shaw back in 1940, and it went on and on. And she was involved in many, many movies. A Star is Born, Postman Rings Twice, Peyton Place, and eventually a TV series, The Falcon Crest. So she was very active in motion pictures and TV. And in 1943, she had a daughter, and her daughter was Cheryl. And so that was Lana Turner's life. And as I said, she took up with Johnny Stompanato. And here's a photo of the three of them, Lana Turner, Johnny Stompanato, as well as Cheryl. And they lived together in Lana Turner's house. This is her house in Beverly Hills. And it was kind of an up and down. There was a lot of argument, a lot of abuse, but they would always reconcile. Lana Turner would always go back to Johnny Stompanato. So life was kind of interesting for the daughter, who kind of lived there and put up with this rocky relationship with the two of them. The The one thing about Johnny Stompanato was that he was very possessive of Lana Turner, didn't want to lose her. And she went over to London to do a movie. It was called Another Time, Another Place, and it was with Sean Connery. And, Johnny Stompanato didn't know whether he could trust Lana doing this movie with Sean Connery. And he flies all the way over to the movie set, and he goes marching on the movie set there with a gun in his hand, and Sean Connery goes over and grabs that gun out of Johnny Stompanato, the mobster's hand, and pulls it away. The Scotland Yards was called. They came in, they took Johnny Stompanato in custody, and they kicked him out of London, out of England. Now, April 1958, Lana Turner went to the Academy Awards. She was nominated for Peyton Place, and she went there with red buttons, not with Johnny Stompanato, and that caused some friction. And on April 4th, 1958, Johnny goes over to Lana Turner's house in Beverly Hills. There's his T-Bird. He drove over there, and he was mad that he was not invited to the Academy Awards. And there was the argument that took place upstairs in the master bedroom. And the daughter, Cheryl, is hearing that. She's downstairs watching television, and she hears the two of them arguing upstairs, and she gets a kitchen knife, and she goes up the stairs there, goes in to the master bedroom, and sees Johnny Stompanato there, and stabs him with that butcher knife. And he falls over dead there on Lana Turner's bedroom floor. Eventually, the police are called. They come out, and they see, Johnny Stompanato. He's the lieutenant, Mickey Cohen, in the mob, and he's been stabbed to death by a 15-year-old. And, eventually his body is removed from Lana Turner's house, and the police are trying to investigate. They get the knife that was used. It was a kitchen knife, and they check it out for prints, and they can't determine any prints on it as to who was holding it at the time. They do a reenactment, whether a young teenager, female, could stab somebody in the heart, especially a large person like Johnny Stompanato. Well, was it a homicide, or was it self-defense? Well, it's decided to have a coroner's inquest, and somehow Lana Turner's attorney, Jerry Giesler, is able to have Cheryl not have to testify at the inquest. And the inquest was held in the Hall of Justice, and I did many inquests there. And where we held them was in the basement next to the coroner's office. And we never had as many people. I never had this many people attend one of the inquests that I had to handle. But there she was. There was Lana Turner and the attorneys there, and the inquest is held. And here we can see Lana Turner is testifying as to what went on in her bedroom at the time that her daughter came in there and stabbed Johnny Stompanato with that knife. And some say that this was Lana Turner's greatest performance, and she should have received an Academy Award. She testified on that witness stand, and she explained how Johnny Stompanato was arguing with her, and he had things in his hand, and the daughter came in and stabbed him, and saved her life from Johnny Stompanato. Well, after hearing all the testimony, the coroner Inquest, the finder there, makes a declaration that it was a justified homicide. So that's how it ended up, a justified homicide. Well, what really happened? Did Lana kill her abusive boyfriend and have her juvenile daughter take the rap? Well, we don't really know. She eventually retired, and her daughter Cheryl Crane, what did she do? Well, she worked as a real estate broker out in Palm Springs for years and years. And she never revealed as to what really happened there. What we do know is, well, the Hollywood mob was made up of Bugsy Siegel originally. Mickey Cohen came along and ran it for a while until he was sent to federal prison. Johnny Stompanato was just one of his assistants and somehow got stabbed to death in Lana Turner's Beverly Hills home. Well, those are the various characters. And what happened? This is where Bugsy Siegel was killed. This was the place where he was reading the newspaper, the Virginia Hill, his girlfriend's house. It looks exactly the same today. I'm out there standing on Linden Drive. Looks very, very peaceful. As far as where Mickey Cohen was shot at Sherry's, it looks different. It's now called the Key Club. It's been torn down. And as far as Rondelli's Italian restaurant, where they tried to get Mickey for the shooting of Jack Whalen, the enforcer, it's the building, the restaurant is still there. The name has been changed. And here, my wife and I are having lunch there. And there aren't any dead bodies on the floor. Nobody is dead. And as far as where Lana Turner was discovered, across from the Hollywood High School, that now is a Carl's Jr. Fast food restaurant. Now, as far as where Johnny Stompanato was killed, Lana Turner's house, well, it's been sold a number of times. And here you can see I'm standing there in the driveway of Lana Turner's house, and the window is right above there where Johnny Stompanato was stabbed to death. Well, that really is kind of the end of the Hollywood mob, maybe right there in Lana Turner's house in Beverly Hills. Well, hopefully you found this episode interesting as well as entertaining, and maybe you learned something new about the Hollywood mob. If you want more information regarding Hollywood, get my book, Celebrity Curse, because it tells about a lot of the inside story of what goes on in Hollywood. Well, please subscribe, and if you want to know when the next podcast is coming out, there's generally a new one every Friday at 3 o'clock, but just to be certain, please subscribe. Well, hopefully you'll join us again for another True Crime Los Angeles podcast, in which we will discuss another case from beginning to end. See you then.